And good afternoon. I welcome you to today's hot topic webinar here together with Admirals. It's Wednesday. It's the 14th of July, 2021. And we will look at right now, interesting topic, which will potentially interest some of us, at least, let's say, the upcoming Olympic Games in Japan. Let me just, by the way, here open the YouTube tab, because I know that the webinar is also live streamed on YouTube. So hello traders, one sec. So I'm here on YouTube right now. It's also live on Zoom, so please feel free, whether you're watching this on Zoom or if you're watching this on YouTube right now, to ask all your questions within the next minutes. If you have any suggestions in terms of the markets we have to cover, we should look at. Also please feel free to enter those in the chat. For all of you right now watching here this on YouTube, may it be the live event, may it be the recording, please leave a thumb up here if you like what you witness. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel from Admirals so that you do not miss any of the upcoming webinars which we produce here within our Trading Spotlight and Hot Topic webinar series, within the daily updates which you are given by my colleague Marcus. Set a reminder to not miss any of the webinars. Did I miss something? No, I don't think so. So yes, let's now jump into the action of today and have a look here at today's topic. Let me share my screen. There we go. And let's take it from here. So we want to answer the question, which are the potential best place when it comes to stocks which are directly affected by the Olympic Games, upcoming Olympic Games. Let me just here in this context also say that the stocks, the list I prepared here for you is not complete. So there might be any other place which might be of interest for you. Before we jump into the action and look at these stocks here, first of all, I'd like to remind you of the current rebranding taking place at Admirals, which you probably know as Admiral Markets, and there's now a rebranding taking place. The rebranding is due to the fact that Admiral Markets, Admirals, started out as one of the, or established itself over the years, developed one of the most well-known and diversified portfolios when it comes to financial service solutions, especially in the trading world and FX and CFD trading here. Over 8,000 financial instruments being offered, making then the next step, then offering also physical stocks, for example, making the real step here to become a true multi-asset broker, and fully regulated. Here in Germany, for example, we usually refer to Admiral Markets, Admirals, as the so-called DAX expert, with the potentially most competitive offering when it comes to spreads here in this space, but also order execution, speed, quality of the order execution. Then now the next step is made, and Admirals is also, for example, offering a credit card which you can get access to, so make money trading the markets, hopefully, and then here switch it over via their backend solution, via your so-called wallet here in this context, and then use the credit card and buy some nice stuff with your hard-earned trading money in this context. So that's certainly there's not only gains, but there's also potential losses. That's something I'd like to emphasize here. But let's hope that most of us watching this right now make money trading the markets and then can transfer these gains into or on our credit card. And also, in addition to that, here there's further steps being made to become an even more sophisticated financial service provider. And due to this, the rebranding is currently taking place, and Admiral Markets is now Admirals in this context. So it's a broker, by the way, one world, one broker. It's easily said, but in case of Admirals, is really the case that we have a broker here which has offices around the globe. So this is very noteworthy, in fact, because I'm myself, I come out of the retail business. I worked in a bank after I finished school, and then went from there to university and took my career in the financial markets there. And I had direct contact with people in the retail space. And what I can say is that if you are facing a client who does not speak your language, who is not native in German in this case, then it's sometimes very difficult to communicate respectively, to build a trustworthy relationship, let's call it. And in that context, this is a bridge which here can be built between the client and then the financial service provider, the bank, respectively, in this case, the broker, by offering a quite big universe of languages being offered. So in case of Admirals, we have offices around the globe. And in this context, chances are quite high that you will face someone in your native language. So this is an English webinar, so no big deal at all, but something to probably keep in mind why this word here, or the wording, one word, one broker, is especially of interest. So now let's go into today's topic and into today's agenda and have a look at what we want to look at. So first of all, I'd like to provide you some stats around the Summer Olympics, the upcoming Summer Olympics in Tokyo, but we won't go through gold medal winners or something from the past, but instead we want to look at the economic effects these games usually have, even though the situation is currently a little different. You probably have heard rising cases now around this new variant, the Delta mutant. I don't even know whether that's the right wording, but Delta, Lambda, I don't know, Theta, Vega, Rho. Some of the options traders might laugh now. Whatever it might be, it's noteworthy because this affects directly the overall politics around this game, around these Olympics now taking place in Tokyo. And there won't be any crowds cheering. And this is probably something to keep in mind, especially when it comes to the overall advertisement deals, which are directly connected to these events. But something we don't want to dig too deep into and take part in these speculative deals here. Most of the fundamentals which are directly affected, or the economic effects it has, probably has it on the so-called broadcasting universe. This is something we would definitely look at. We also want to answer let's put it that way, look at a very interesting development right now taking place in the Nikkei 225 here. Very interesting because we've just somehow consolidated out of a strong uptrend, but probably we are about to re-enter it rather sooner than later. Right now, as you might have seen, equities are around the globe rising. If I'm not wrong, I just saw that the SPY, the Spider, the ETF on the S&P 500 is about to make new all-time highs, currently trading in all-time high territory. In the pre-market, if I'm not mistaken, we are also about to, or probably reach new all-time highs in the DAX. Probably there's also some squeeze potential with the upcoming expiration. However we put it, there's also some bullishness in the Japanese stock market, in this case, the Nikkei 225. And in this case, by the way, we also have a fundamental catalyst, which could also drive prices higher, the Olympic Games, which we will see. And then I'll go through some sponsorship deals here, which potentially yield big gains. And then I'll get you through my top 3 Summer Olympic stocks. And so let's start. Oh, I'm sorry, that was a little too much. So first of all, we want to start here with some stats around the Summer Olympics. So first of all, due to the coronavirus pandemic, the Summer Olympics were postponed by 1 year. So usually they take place every 4 years. Now it's the 5th year after 2016. And now I think it was Brazil. Yes, right. It was Brazil in Rio de Janeiro, if I'm not mistaken. Because recently I was in a discussion. I think it was together with Paul and Marcus, and we were wondering, and I haven't checked it out, but Paul mentioned it was probably China, Beijing, but I think Beijing was 2008. However, so all in all, now due to the coronavirus in 2020, well, we now have the Summer Olympic Games taking place, kicking off in 21 on July 23rd. So on, let me just think about it, next week on Friday, we see the kickoff of the Summer Olympic Games in Tokyo. And I'm sorry. In general, the Olympic Games are built as the largest sporting event, in fact, in the world. With the Summer Olympics here are very, very expensive to stage, in fact. And this year's Tokyo event is expected to cost a record 15.4 billion USD, with the 1-year delay caused by the COVID-19 pandemic having pushed the cost up by 22%. So this is definitely something to keep in mind here in this context. And especially the staging country usually profits heavily. This is something to keep in mind. So costs were increased, but still the staging country, in this case, Japan, usually profits heavily from this. So, for example, 2016 games in Rio, by the way, there we have it, Rio de Janeiro. So it's 2016. What happened here was that there were 9 billion USD being pumped into the Brazilian economy, and that's most likely not due to the Olympic Games itself and the athletes here competing with each other, but there are many spin-off effects here, which can be found with statistics, for example, in this context, showing that the value of the host country's major stock index rises on average of 75% here during the month in which the Olympic and Paralympic Games are held, which means this is directly bringing us to the Nikkei 225 in this context here. So this is a screenshot I've taken earlier today. So that's a most recent chart in this context. And what we have in this context is a clear uptrend, as you can see from the COVID-19 lows here in March 2020. And then we saw a strong rise higher, strong bounce, consolidating here, and then into the yearly close, there was another sharp push higher back above, what was it, two new yearly highs. It was 24,000. And then, yeah, taking it from there, pushing as high as 30,000 points. I think that was the highest levels we traded at since the late 1980s, if I'm not mistaken. The reason I say that is because I haven't checked the history here, but I remember a tweet from probably I've heard about him, Nick Gleason. This is from Barings Bank, the man who brought down, the trader who brought down Barings Bank with some speculative bets on the Nikkei 225 in this context, in the futures and options market. And the thing is that he mentioned something. I remember that tweet that he was laughing. That's unfortunately over 30 years too late now that the market is crossing these levels he was trading against. But however we put this, from a technical perspective, things are getting really interesting, because what you can see is that we now stalled a little. So we didn't continue to push significantly higher from the levels of 16,000, but we nearly doubled in price or in points in this context here. And then we're stalling now, something we usually refer as a so-called bull flag, which develops here. And as you can see here, now we drifted out of this uptrend, but we are about to enter the uptrend again, and also breaking this flag here now on the upside, with a potential projected target to somewhere in the area of 36,000 in the months to come. So this is not something we should expect during the Olympic Summer Games now to take place, but this is probably the path we are entering here with this statistical edge in trading the index here, the major index of the hosting country from the long side. And as you may see here, so if we're now taking off, and if we continue to see this bullishness around the globe, and it's likely to continue, I mean, there's certainly several reasons to be very skeptical when it comes to the current developments. Probably have seen yesterday's inflation data with another uptick. I was surprised to see that, by the way. So I expected really in line a print below 5%. That we've seen another uptick there shows that even if you try to somehow manipulate the data, let's say, to probably calm people down currently expecting an increase, a massive rise in inflation, or to dampen inflation fears, let's call it that way, probably. That even if you try to manipulate the data, and if you try to exchange the goods you're looking at here and the price developments to if you look at the basket you look at here, and you're not capable of somehow holding the data down, we can all in all suspect that right now inflation is not just significantly higher for the average person, since these baskets of inflation or goods which should reflect inflation in the overall country where it comes from, but in addition to that, over time, it will be very difficult to keep yields lower and holding the yields down. So we are mainly referring here to the US. So we are not really looking at Japan, but overall, we see certainly a positive correlation between the Nikkei 225, and for example, the S&P 500 or the DAX in this context, with in fact the S&P 500 playing the major role here and telling equity indices around the globe, in fact, where we should go and where we should head it. And so why do I emphasize inflation? Because over time, it wouldn't come as a surprise to see a spike in yields. And as we have witnessed in March, for example, and this especially for the tech and growth sector, the spikes in yields are not it's quite usual to see at least a sharper pop on the downside, or drop in this case, than on the downside, and something to keep in mind. And if this plays out in US equities, which to me, to be honest, look very extended on the upside, certainly we could also see a spillover effect on equity indices like the Nikkei 225 in this context. But still, overall, technically, statistically, and given also as a fundamental catalyst, the Olympic Games usually should result in the Nikkei to continue to rise. And most likely, given the projection here from this perspective, probably in the higher 30s, in fact, up to 36,000 points. So let's come here to the next slide, and now look a little deeper and shine light on especially sponsorship deals and stocks in this context here, which could be directly positively affected from the Olympic Games. And by the way, I have to just take a look here at my preparation for the day. So you're already used to this. If it's not the first time, which if you're watching this now, you know that during every Wednesday, also every Friday, we have here our event taking place around the US market opening, which will take place at 3:30 German time in this context. And so what I do here is I prepare my slide with necessary data I need to decide whether taking a trade or not. If you wonder which stocks are of interest for me today, it's Baba and it's Didi, two Chinese companies, in fact, and two ADRs. Baba just announced, in fact, potential cooperation with Tencent. Probably have heard about this, with considering both companies considering opening their ecosystems to each other, to one another here in this context. And Alibaba considers letting e-commerce customers from their end here buy goods with Tencent's WeChat Pay. And so this is it's a quite big deal, especially if you look at the chart from Baba in the long run here. So we are not in Tokyo or in Japan anymore, but now in Chinese companies and short term. But as of now, stock is trading over 3%, a gap 3% higher, and over 1 million shares were already traded pre-market, which is if you look at the average daily trading volume of 14.8 million, quite interesting, and also something you should keep an eye on today. So if we see a flush into the open, probably let's see, it's 213 214 probably, which could be of interest, because if we see markets holding that level, these are the days from yesterday, and taking off from there, it could be risk reward wise quite interesting here, because we could be about to see a pop up to 220 222, probably even 224. So risk reward wise, this seems very interesting. And Didi also very strongly under pressure after its IPOs 2 weeks ago, I think. Not really sure, but saw some heavier selling pressure. And it's not, right now, even though the overall bias among Chinese ADRs or Chinese companies in general, and all the potential restrictions and consequences from the Biden administration, seems somehow, even though there's some very bearish sentiment, bottoming out around 11, and there was a key level around 12, which we yesterday recaptured and hold above now. And as of now, in the pre-market also, we're holding this level, trading around these highs, which were made yesterday. So this is also very interesting, because if we can hold 12 here, this could be the starting of a bounce in the upcoming days, bringing us somewhere back to $14 probably, and also risk reward wise could be very interesting. But this is just something as a side note. Let's say, let's come back to today's presentation, and now the potential stocks which could be or should be of interest here in context of the Olympic Games. So sponsorship deals yield big gains potentially. So in general, the Olympics can be seen as the biggest sponsorship event in the world here. And as of now, the Tokyo Games attracted a record of 3.3 billion US dollar in sponsorship dollars, with companies lining up to advertise and sponsor events with an expected worldwide audience of about 3 billion people to watch the events. And you probably have seen that, and we shouldn't underestimate this. Probably you have followed the soccer, the European Meisterschaft. In Germany, we call this Europameisterschaft. It's not the World Cup; it's the Euro Cup. Is it the right word? So you probably have seen that at least. And there's also some companies like Coca-Cola, for example, advertising during these events. And there was this press conference with Cristiano Ronaldo once Portugal was still in the tournament, and then he sat down there, saw the bottles of Coca-Cola in front of him, took them away, and right at that moment, the stock sold off heavily, and something like, I don't know, it was a bigger billion loss in terms of market cap, which Coca-Cola lost in this moment when this star player from Portugal here removed their bottles from this presser here, and telling people to drink water. So he's a father. I mean, and obviously he's very careful about what his overall role as a father, as a role model is, in fact. And I mean, that was a nice move if you consider it from a perspective of a father. If you look at it from an investor perspective, or if you look at it from an let's say long-term investor perspective in this case, then you probably didn't like that move at all. But that to be said, I mean, that directly, perfectly illustrates how important these sponsorship deals, these advertisement deals are. And so what we want to do now is we want to keep an eye on companies you can trade with Admirals here, like Comcast, for example, and give an idea on why these investments, why these trades could be of interest, besides a very interesting technical picture you can see here with Comcast, obviously. So what we have here is a company which is within this let's say Olympic Games business for, I don't know, the parent company of, as you can see here, Comcast, the parent company is NBC. And NBC has been the official broadcaster of the Olympics in the US since 1964. So 50 to 60 years. So, and Comcast, what we can see here in the first bullet point is that Comcast paid $7.62 billion to broadcast all of the Summer and Winter Olympic Games from 2020 through 2032. And so that being said, obviously results in Comcast potentially profiting in the long run, especially from, or not profiting. That depends a little on the overall developments there. Because now the thing is that you might probably wonder, okay, if people watch the Olympic Games still? What I can say from a personal perspective, where developments now around the tournament taking place, I didn't watch any of the games, not the German ones, but also any of the other games. I knew that the Italians had a quite good run during the tournament, and finally also won the tournament. But I only know that because we have a small restaurant on the other side of the street here, and they are Italians, and then they get crazy about this. And there's also what's the word? It's not a trainer. It's in the kindergarten of my son. There's also an Italian woman here who is also very fascinated by watching soccer, and then always being very, very involved in the games. Let's put it that way. But to me, a soccer game needs an audience. There must be people around this. This is giving the whole situation emotions, and if it's not given, and it's not the same, at least not in my personal world. When I saw what happened in Hungary, for example, also in England and Wembley, with all the people cheering, that was something, well, that was back to normal, let's say. But all in all, I could imagine, at least from a personal perspective, that this is something which potentially also affects the overall behavior and willingness from people to watch the Olympic Games, and thus directly affecting the investment which Comcast did here, getting this deal here on broadcasting the Olympic Games then in this context for Tokyo. And so as you can see here, NBC Universal advertising deals or sales for Rio in 2016 totaled 1.2 billion across broadcast, cable, and digital platforms. And for this year's Tokyo Games, NBC Universal has already secured more than 1.25 billion in advertising commitments. And that being said, is probably something which is still giving the overall, and also given the overall developments here. Oh yeah, no question. No question about that. The main intention, I said this, and coming back to Cristiano Ronaldo and Coca-Cola. So 1 billion in market cap. Someone writes here in the chat box, is nothing. These events are overestimated. They might be overestimated, but it perfectly fits the overall narrative. I want to point out here that these advertisement deals shouldn't be underestimated. So they affect, or these games and thus the deals being done here, especially from an advertising perspective, sponsorships perspective, they affect the overall price, or in this case, the developments you should expect for the stock, the underlying stock in this context. So that's why I made this point. 1 billion, I think it was erased quite quickly back then, or over time now, but no question about that. So it's definitely nothing big in this context, but still something which is noteworthy and underlines the narrative, or the point I want to make here. So in case of Comcast, we have a stock which is currently up 8% year to date, finding itself in a strong uptrend, as you can see here. And so we're about, in fact, to break out. So as you can see here, we are trading all in all around 57, 58 USD right now. And if we get to see a break higher, so as you can see, we're continuously making higher lows in this context, which is showing that there's demand coming into the stock here, potentially in anticipation probably of the overall Olympic Games, probably because of that, don't know. But whatever the reason is, there's obviously coming demand into the stock here. And as of now, we weren't, as of now, not able to break higher. But once we run above that level and into the 60s, chances are, I think, good that we will test the upper trend line, which corresponds with a potential target in the second half of the year, then potentially also driven by the developments right now around the Olympic Games, because there's some kind of surprise, some kind of uptick in revenue, advertisement, these deals playing out. However, that this is potentially a driver here, which could bring us as high as 66, 67, something like that. So with a test of the upper trend line, I think this is something we should expect once we break out of this channel here on the upside. So once again, I just have to see. Okay, that's interesting. And so I have to include some data again. So now with the opening taking place, and the interesting thing is that we know it broke just higher in NVIDIA at least. So that's the stock I can see here. Let me just see. Okay. And let me just also check here once again. Baba. Okay. it's not as active as I thought it would probably be traded, because now we only have 1.1 million shares being traded, which is similar to the last print 10 minutes ago. So usually you expect here trading activity picking up the nearer we come to the opening, which is not happening as of now. That's surprising. Let's just see whether this is then something to keep an eye on today. Probably Didi is the place to be. So Ralph Lauren, also very interesting. So we look at it, very important side note here in this context. We look at it from a US perspective, especially. So Comcast obviously plays a role in the US, and here in the broadcasting world in the US. Ralph Lauren in this context is also the producer of not just outfits in general, but it's the designer of the outfits which are worn here by the American equipe in this context. So very important to note. So these types these titles, the stocks I mentioned here, might be different when you look at other countries. So we face here, we focus here on the US and in this context, then on what markets are most likely be affected then in the US equity market, which is mainly due to the fact that it's the most active traded country, not the stocks are very liquid, and in this context something to keep an eye on. Remember, let's put it that way. So yeah, what do we do here? Ralph Lauren. So it's not just a classic sport equipment. It's not just classic. So that's probably there needs to be comma, but it's that sport equipment is of interest around the Olympic Games here. And the designer of athletes' uniforms can get a lot of attention too. So Ralph Lauren is probably not known as the so-called classic company which you look at once you look at shoes or something like Nike or something like that, or Adidas, for example. But it's also that with all the current social media buzz and athletes also tweeting, what causes attention and what people keep an eye on is, what do my favorite athletes wear? Also in the day-to-day business, or in their free time on their vacation. And so in this context, then the uniforms and the designer of these uniforms, as Ralph Lauren in case of the US team, then the US equipe here, is of interest for market participants. And especially now, the opening ceremonies of the Rio Games, for example, created attention around the brand. And so that could be of interest again now around the Tokyo opening ceremony. And probably, and this is something to keep in mind. I'm usually not a big fan of thinking that such an event itself is now creating any kind of attention in the stock, but times have changed a little. And what we certainly see is that there's now retail traders pouring into the market, and sometimes driving stock prices higher, respectively lower, especially higher. That comes down in this context, for example, than when we look at developments in stocks like AMC GME, for example. So Ralph Lauren is certainly a value stock in this context, so not a meme stock or something like that, but definitely something which is of interest. Even though, to keep this in mind, it's not necessarily sad that only because we keep an eye here on the opening ceremony here in Tokyo, that this will directly affect the stock. But longer term, I think developments here they're definitely of interest. So this is also a screenshot I've taken here. And what we can right now see is that Ralph Lauren is, as of now, trading here in a range. And the thing is, we topped out again now against 114 and pushing back here down to the region around 100. But if we see a test of this region, I think risk reward wise could be probably of interest then, to see some stronger demand coming into here 100 and seeing a bounce again to and also above 140, which could then in the months to come most likely not being affected by the Olympic Games anymore, but also open the door here for prices up to 119. So it could be a double from the current levels if we push down to 100, probably lower than that, into the range around 90, and then taking off from there if the breakout happens. If it happens, so this is something to keep an eye on and keep in mind. But if we get to see some kind of break up on above 140, the door would be certainly open here up to 190, probably $200 per share. Yeah, and then we are heading here into another interesting stock in this context, a stock which is of interest due to the nutrition aspect. So it's General Mills, also as you can see here in the chart, in an uptrend right now, and having found support here on the downside that's around 52 to 53. All of the stocks I, by the way, mentioned are not the classic active trading stocks with high volatility, high beta, and all this, but these are more kind of the value aspects. Also for the longer term stocks you probably look for and most likely invest some of your funds into, or longer term portfolio you look for. But as you can see here, we found support here at the range around 50, 53, 54, and then heading higher. As of now, topping out a little around 62 to 65, but still we are in an uptrend. And as long as we trade above 52 to 53, 54, I could imagine here, I really could imagine that we are about to see a pop higher and probably about to push to the 2016 yearly highs. Rio, remember, so that was the year once the Olympic Games in Rio took place, probably up to 72 here. So now the question still is who's General Mills? Probably I've heard about it, but the company and the ticker symbol is GIS here. It's the producer of Wheaties, which is promoted as the breakfast of champions. I really well remember the time back in the 1990s already, that there were this hype around cereals in general, and Kellogg's Frosties, and some of you probably will smile now because we all know this. And the same is true here for General Mills as the producer of these so-called Wheaties, which is in fact a product which is directly connected here with the brand for nearly 100 years now, so nearly a century, and thus having seen plenty of Olympic Games and also potential bullish environments for the overall stock here. And the so-called vintage Wheaties box does the following. It features Olympic athletes here, and they are collector's items, in fact. So this is also something we know. I know that there's here in Germany, we have so-called Panini albums where you can, in front of big tournaments like the World Cup or something, you can collect the faces of soccer players. So the same approach here with General Mills and their Wheaties, and so these items are bought and sold online, often for hundreds of dollars. That probably might not be of high interest, but it directly affects the demand for here this breakfast of the champions, especially among these Olympic Games here. And so certainly how much here Wheaties, and especially here General Mills as the company behind this product, will benefit from the Olympic Association isn't quite clear, but cereal sales could probably help the stock to continue its recent uptrend here and result, as I already pointed out, in the test of the 2016 yearly highs around 72.50 in this context on the upside. So are there any other stocks which you think are probably of interest here in this context? Something you'd probably like to see covered? Let me just check here the YouTube channel. So as of now, no, here's no question. You just check here. Any companies we haven't yet covered? Let me just, by the way, let me just check over here. Do I have it still open? No, it's not. Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. So we popped directly into 213 to 214 in case of BABA, by the way, into the open. Let me just check here another stock which is probably of interest. One which broke two new highs just recently after strong break higher. And I will share also my screen here. 1 second. I'll just take it over here. So this is not my charting platform. So it's not my trading platform. It's not the MetaTrader. But what I look here, well, what you can see here is my trading view charts, and also with the direct access to the stock and the volume being traded. So I have here now the classic example, in this case Nike, and Nike just broke out, gapped aggressively higher here, and two new all-time highs above 150. That was already here on the, let me just check the date. It was the 25th of June. And so earnings were very, very good, as you can see here. So date was 24th. You have here earnings per share in this context came in at 0.93 against 0.51. It was also a massive uptick in case of online sales in China sales, and that was really crushing numbers. And that let me come to the conclusion that here in case of Nike now, this breakout, this gap higher probably is here to stay. I say that because we haven't even seen an attempt to close the gap on the day of the or post the earnings release, and continue to straightly trade higher, and now broke above 116. That was, by the way, also a region I mentioned in a market recap I did for some clients at my end. I haven't, by the way, shared it via Twitter, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't probably I don't know, but certainly this is of high interest, because this drive now it could continue also over the Olympic Games. So I think Nike is a classic example of a sporting outfit producer. I'm not really sure whether this is the right word to put it. It's probably better to wait for consolidation here, probably pull in back into the range around 155, probably a deeper pop down to, let's say, 147 here, and then taking it from there. I think risk reward wise, that could be really interesting also for longer term engagements, because the upside potential, therefore I duplicate this range here, take it 125, the high is around 140, 45, 150, it's 20 to 25 bucks more. So the potential up here is up to 170, 175 probably, and also could be driven higher than from the developments around the upcoming Olympic Games in Tokyo. And so, yeah, that's it. Let's come back here. So my top threes, as I presented, are the Comcast, our Ralph Lauren, General Mills, for the more active traders, or the ones looking for companies which are probably a little more volatile as of now, at least. Probably Nike, NKE as a potential candidate. But let's come back here to the. Oh. By the way, let me just see. So just one question. Can you still see my screen? I just have to check this right now. So could you just let me know whether you can still see my screen? So usually it shouldn't be a big deal. Yes. Okay. So you can see summary. Okay, perfect. Because now I just saw that my here my camera was just switched or something like that. Okay, perfect. Everything fine then. So yeah, let's have a look here at the key stats we looked at in the last minutes. So in general, the Olympic Games are built as the largest sporting event in the world, with the Summer Olympics are expensive to stage. And this year, the Tokyo event here is expected to cost around a record 15.5 billion USD, with the 1 year delay caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, which pushed cost up 19%. This is potentially weighing on the not the growth margin, but the revenue margin, probably, let's put it that way, here from some companies, but still it should be a quite profitable event for many companies. So especially the staging country in this case, so Japan usually profits heavily. So in 2016, for example, the 2016 games in Rio here pumped 9 billion USD into the Brazilian economy. And in general, there usually are many so-called spin-off benefits here. which, for example, show that there are statistics which show that the value of the host currency major stock index, in this case, the Nikkei 225 here, rises on average in around 75% of the cases here in the month in which the Olympic, respectively, the Paralympic Games are held. And again, as I pointed out, the markets traders, but also longer-term investors, most likely, I'd probably say, should watch are the Nikkei, the JP 225, in case of trading the CFD with Admirals, the Comcast, it's the stock, but also a hashtag. You can trade the CFD also from the short side. If you say, I completely disagree with you, Jens, I only want to trade the short side here because I think these markets you just pointed out are mostly or the potential profits or respectively positive effects are mostly priced in. So I expect the stock to sell off. We can also do that by trading the CFD, the underlying CFD here in this context. So Comcast, Ralph Lauren, and General Mills. And yeah, so the next slide is then bringing us here to the next, presentation, which will take place on Friday with Paul together. So Paul will talk about an introduction to scalping and scalping the markets, and answer some questions for you, with you, so on what is scalping. So that's first, and then how we can scalp safely, at least say how can we calculate our risk as good as possible once we decide to scalp the markets, what markets we should focus on then, and also what we should do during, or then also not during, but also afterwards our trading session, and will take place on Friday, 2 p.m. London again, 16th of July. In this context, check your inbox for the webinar link if you already registered. If not, Trading Spotlight webinar series, it's not the hot topic webinar series, so very important differentiation. Then head over here to Admirals and type in or look for the educations tab and their webinars tab, and there you can directly register for all webinars. By the way, it's not just the hot topic webinar together with me and Paul, but also the evergreens, the Trading Spotlight webinars, and also the daily event taking place together with Marcus. I'm sorry, Marcus. I hope you didn't see that. So here are the contact details. And as a fully regulated broker, we also have here the risk disclaimer we want to shine a light on. And so that's it from my end for today. I just hope that you liked what you just witnessed here. If you liked it, if you are watching this on YouTube, leave a thumb up here, subscribe to the YouTube channel, set a reminder, leave a comment, feel free to ask all your questions, and all the best from my end. Happy trading. Watch your stops. Talk to you next time. See you there. Bye-bye.